My sister lied to inherit our father's property, while I paid all taxes and bills, so I exposed her, leaving the family in chaos. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and for most of my adult life, I've been the one keeping my family afloat. After Dad passed away when I was in my mid-20s, I took on the responsibility of maintaining the house he left behind. It wasn't much to some people, just an old 2-story home in our town, with creaky floors and a backyard that always needed work, but to me it was a legacy. I paid every property tax, fixed broken pipes, replaced the worn-out roof, and kept the utilities running without fail. Every time I handed over yet another bill or arranged yet another repair, I reminded myself that this was what family loyalty looked like. My sister, Claire, on the other hand, had a very different relationship with responsibility. She was charming, persuasive, and somehow always slipped out of any real work while Mom doted on her endlessly. Claire could talk her way out of chores, bills, or even the smallest contributions to household upkeep, and yet she was praised as the smart one or our girl who's making something of herself. Meanwhile, I quietly carried the financial and emotional weight of the home we grew up in. I never complained, because I believed it was the right thing to do, and deep down, I thought my family recognized it, even if they never said it aloud. Most evenings, I'd sit at the kitchen table surrounded by stacks of bills and spreadsheets, running numbers in my head while Claire lounged on the couch scrolling through her phone, occasionally asking if she could borrow a few dollars. I told myself that one day they'd see how much I did, that Mom would stop praising Claire for her charm and actually acknowledge the work I put in every single month. For now, I took quiet pride in my role. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Little did I know, this sense of trust and responsibility I held so dearly would soon be tested in ways I never imagined, and that the person I trusted most in my family was already plotting a betrayal that would shake the very foundation I worked so hard to protect. I never thought of myself as resentful, but over the years, the weight of responsibility began to settle in my chest like a constant ache. I worked long hours at my job, then came home to tend to the house, paying bills, fixing leaky faucets, mowing the lawn, and handling every little thing Dad had left behind. Claire, meanwhile, seemed almost allergic to any kind of effort. She'd wander through the house asking about this repair or that payment, not to help but just to check in, while Mom nodded along as if everything she said was insightful. I gritted my teeth and kept going, telling myself that keeping the peace was worth more than any personal recognition. But the cracks in our family's balance started to show. Claire began asking more pointed questions about the house's finances, about property ownership, and even about tax filings. She'd casually mentioned that maybe she should learn how all this works, while I juggled spreadsheets and receipts like a circus performer. Each time, I brushed it off, thinking she was genuinely curious, even though a small voice in my head whispered that something felt off. I tried to keep my suspicion private. It wasn't paranoia. I had been handling this house for years, and I had every right to question motives. Mom didn't help. She would sigh whenever I mentioned the extra work I was doing and say, "Claire's young. She doesn't need to worry about that yet." She painted my concerns as overreaction and told me that responsibility was part of being the man of the house. Every word felt like a subtle jab, a reminder that no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be seen as the favored child. Despite this, I kept my head down, believing that my diligence and integrity would eventually speak for themselves. I told myself that the house was my legacy as much as it was Claire's, and I wasn't about to let petty doubts distract me. But the more questions Claire asked, the more I realized she was watching, calculating, and waiting for the right moment. And deep down, I feared that when that moment came, it might change everything I thought I knew about my family. I started noticing little things that didn't add up, little cracks in the life I thought I understood. Claire was spending more and more time handling the paperwork for the house, or at least that's what she claimed. She'd disappear for hours on end with her laptop, talking to lawyers, banks, and city offices, always saying she was just making sure everything's in order. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, she was family, and I wanted to trust her. But every time I asked a simple question about what she was doing, she brushed me off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mom, as usual, dismissed my concerns. "You worry too much," she said. "Claire's just trying to learn about things she'll need someday. You should be proud she wants to help." Proud? I wanted to shake her and scream that this wasn't about helping. I had been paying taxes, fixing broken pipes, and keeping the house from falling apart for years. Every cent I earned, every late night I spent patching up the roof or calling the utility company, had been my way of protecting what Dad left us. And now, it felt like everyone, even Mom, was turning a blind eye to Claire's growing interference. The first real pang of suspicion hit me when I overheard Claire on the phone one evening, talking about getting everything transferred and finalizing documents, without any mention of me or the work I'd done. My stomach turned over. I tried to confront her casually, joking about checking my name on the paperwork. But she laughed it off, saying, "Relax. You'll see when the time comes." There was something sharp in her tone, a hidden edge that made my skin crawl. By then, I realized that something was very wrong. The person I had trusted most, my sister, my family, might be planning to take advantage of everything I'd worked for. And while I didn't know the full extent yet, I could feel it looming like a storm on the horizon. Whatever she was planning, it was going to change everything. And I had no idea how deep the betrayal would go. I thought I had prepared myself for anything. But nothing could have braced me for the day I received the letter from the city's property office. My hands shook as I unfolded it, scanning the words that made my heart stop. The house was now legally under Claire's name. Every year of bills, repairs, and taxes I had paid. Every sleepless night spent patching leaks or negotiating with contractors had effectively been wiped out. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me, leaving me numb and trembling. How could she have done this? How could Mom have allowed it? I confronted Mom immediately, holding the letter like a weapon. She avoided my gaze, fumbling for words. "Well, Claire handled some paperwork," she said weakly. "I mean, maybe Dad intended it this way?" I stared at her, my chest tightening, every syllable she spoke twisting the knife deeper. For years I had trusted my family, believed that my sacrifices would be recognized. And now, I felt like a fool, blindsided, humiliated, and enraged all at once. Claire, of course, acted completely normal when I confronted her. Her voice was casual, almost sweet. "Relax," she said. "I just took care of things Dad left unfinished. You've done so much already." It was fine. Fine. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her understand what she had stolen from me. Not just money or property, but years of trust and loyalty. She just smiled, as if everything I had done was meaningless. That night, I sat in the empty living room, the silence of the house pressing down on me. Every corner reminded me of my labor, every room a record of what I had given, and yet it felt like nothing. I realized, for the first time, that my sister, the person I had grown up loving and protecting, had deliberately betrayed me, and my mother had allowed it. My head spun with anger, disbelief, and sorrow. And I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just a mistake or oversight. This was intentional. Little did I know. This discovery was only the beginning of a battle that would strip everything bare in force. My family into chaos. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The next morning, I cornered Claire in the kitchen, my hands trembling, my voice barely under control. "How could you do this?" I demanded. "All these years, I've paid every bill, fixed every problem, and you just took it." She looked at me with that same unnerving calm, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "I've earned it," she said, her tone almost smug. "I'm the one who will actually live here, make a family, keep it going. You've done your part. It's time for me to take over." I felt my blood boil. "Earned it?" I spat. "You've done nothing. Everything I've done, every cent, every repair, every sleepless night, did that mean nothing to you?" She shrugged, casual and unbothered, as if my pain was an inconvenience rather than a real emotion. Mom, standing behind her, offered her usual defense. "You need to understand she's just more capable in this situation. Maybe you've been too focused on the past." My stomach twisted. Their words cut deeper than any slap could. My family was turning against me, gaslighting me into thinking that my sacrifices were meaningless, that my loyalty was naive. The argument escalated quickly. Voices were raised, accusations thrown back and forth, and for a moment, it felt like the house itself was trembling under the weight of years of unspoken resentments. Claire's face remained icy, almost triumphant, while I felt like a trapped animal, desperate and unheard. I realized then that it wasn't just about the property anymore. It was about my place in the family. My identity as the responsible one, how quickly it could all be stripped away. By the end of that confrontation, I was left feeling completely isolated. The people I had trusted most, my mother, my sister, had sided against me. And I couldn't tell whether their loyalty to family was genuine or just a facade to cover selfishness. I sat in my room that night, exhausted, humiliated, and burning with anger, knowing that this betrayal wasn't going to end quietly. Something had to be done. But what? I spent the next few days in a fog, replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. Then, while cleaning out Dad's old storage room, a place I had avoided because it held too many memories, I stumbled across a dusty, leather-bound box tucked behind some cardboard crates. Inside were letters, receipts, and most importantly, the original copy of Dad's will. My hands shook as I read through it. It clearly stated that the house was to be split equally between Claire and me. My chest tightened. My stomach dropped. Everything I thought I knew about my family, everything I had sacrificed, was built on a lie. The twist hit me like a punch to the gut. Claire and, to my dismay, Mom had manipulated the paperwork, falsifying documents to transfer full ownership to Claire. Years of my hard work had been stolen under the guise of family duty. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak so intense that I could barely breathe. How could someone I loved so deeply betray me like this? How could Mom, who had always praised my dedication, allow this to happen? I knew immediately that I couldn't let it slide. This wasn't just about property. It was about trust, fairness, and finally exposing the truth. But the situation was dangerous. One wrong move. Claire could use her charm and Mom's complicity to paint me as the troublemaker or the greedy sibling. I needed proof, strategy, and patience, all while keeping my emotions in check. As I left the storage room that evening, clutching the will like a lifeline, I realized this battle was far from over. The midpoint twist had changed everything. The betrayal was deeper, more calculated, and more personal than I could have imagined. I had uncovered the truth, but exposing it would bring the family into chaos. And I wasn't sure I was ready for the storm that was coming. After discovering Dad's original will, I knew I couldn't confront Claire or Mom without solid evidence. I spent hours each day compiling every scrap that proved my years of sacrifice. Bank statements showing my payments for property taxes, repair invoices, utility bills, and even photographs documenting the countless repairs I had done. Each document I gathered felt like a small victory, but also a reminder of everything Claire had stolen from me. The more I compiled, the angrier I became, but I had to channel that anger carefully. One wrong move, and they could twist the story to make me look like the villain. I reached out to an old lawyer friend Dad had trusted. We reviewed every piece of evidence, the original will, my payment records, and email correspondence that showed Claire's attempts to bypass my knowledge. My lawyer confirmed what I feared, but also gave me hope. There was a strong legal case against Claire and, unfortunately, a complicity case for Mom. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I finally had the tools to fight back. But it was still terrifying. Confronting them legally would destroy family relationships. And the thought of the chaos that would follow made my stomach churn. Every evening, I returned home pretending everything was normal, hiding my preparation work under casual smiles and quiet nods. Claire still acted smug, unaware that her carefully built facade was beginning to crumble. Even Mom maintained her usual act, praising Claire while subtly undermining me. Behind the scenes, I was building a case, and each new piece of proof felt like laying another brick in the foundation of my eventual victory. By the end of the week, I had a complete file. I sat alone in my room, staring at the evidence spread across my desk, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion, fear, and determination. I knew the next steps would be messy, emotional, and potentially explosive. But for the first time in months, I felt like I had power, like I could finally take control of the situation and reveal the truth. Little did I know, the fight I was preparing for would push me to my rock-bottom moment sooner than I expected. I thought I was ready to fight, but nothing prepared me for how low things would sink before I could strike back. One evening, I returned home to find Claire smirking in the living room, her bags packed. "You're making everyone miserable," she said casually. "Maybe it's better if you leave for a while. Go stay with friends," Mom nodded silently, avoiding my gaze, as if my years of sacrifice didn't matter at all. I felt blindsided, humiliated, and utterly abandoned. The home I had preserved for so long now felt like a prison, and I was cast out as the troublemaker. I ended up at a friend's apartment with just a backpack and my laptop. I felt utterly alone. Claire had spun a story among extended family that I was greedy, selfish, and trying to steal what was hers. Texts from relatives accusing me of being ungrateful flooded my phone. Every message stabbed deeper than the last. I had dedicated my adult life to protecting this family's legacy. And now they were treating me like an intruder. I spent nights pacing the small apartment, replaying every conversation, every argument, every thank you that had never come. Doubt crept in. Had I been naive all these years? Was my sense of loyalty just a weakness that Claire exploited? I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and questioning not just my relationship with my sister and mother, but my own judgment. But in that despair, a flicker of resolve began to form. I realized that their attempt to break me might actually backfire. The very evidence I had gathered, the proof of years of my dedication and Claire's deception, could be my weapon. I had hit rock bottom, emotionally and socially. But that low point also sharpened my focus. I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If I didn't act soon, Claire would solidify her lies, and I'd lose everything permanently. It was time to make my move, and it would shake the family to its core. Just when I thought I had nowhere left to turn, an unexpected message arrived. It was from Dad's old accountant, a man I hadn't heard from in years. He had been quietly holding on to a collection of original estate documents, including notarized copies of the will and even recordings of Dad discussing how he wanted the property divided equally. My heart pounded as I realized this was the confirmation I needed. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, was true, but now I had proof. The realization ignited a spark of determination I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't just fighting for the house anymore. I was fighting for justice, for truth, and for the respect that had been stolen from me. The pieces were finally in place, and I could take the next step with confidence. But I also knew that exposing this wouldn't be easy. Claire and Mom had already painted me as the greedy, ungrateful sibling, and revealing their deception would bring the family to the brink of chaos. I began planning carefully, consulting my lawyer friend about how to approach the situation without giving them room to twist the narrative. Each day I worked quietly, gathering the accountant's proof, organizing my evidence, and preparing to confront them legally and emotionally. The stress was immense, but it was tempered by a growing sense of control. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand. That evening, sitting alone in my temporary apartment, I felt a strange combination of fear, anticipation, and satisfaction. I knew that once I made my move, there would be no turning back. The family I had tried so hard to protect would be forced to face the truth, and the consequences would ripple through every relationship I had left. For the first time since Claire's betrayal, I felt empowered. I had uncovered the truth, and soon, the family that had allowed this injustice to fester would be forced to confront it. But the storm I was about to unleash would be more chaotic and emotional than I could have imagined. The day finally came when I decided to lay everything on the table. I scheduled a family meeting at the house, knowing it would force Claire and Mom into a corner. I arrived early, carrying a thick folder of evidence. The accountant's documents, my detailed receipts, photos of the repairs, and the original copy of Dad's will. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering in my chest. This was the moment that would decide everything. When Claire walked in, she gave me a smug smile, clearly expecting me to back down. Mom followed, her face carefully neutral, trying to act as if this was just a routine discussion. I ignored their expressions and opened the folder, spreading the evidence across the kitchen table. I began calmly explaining each item: the years I had paid taxes, handled repairs, and maintained the property, all while Claire had done nothing but manipulate paperwork. Then I revealed the original will and the accountant's recordings. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Claire's smugness faltered. She fumbled for words, her carefully constructed facade cracking. Mom gasped, her hands trembling slightly, unable to respond immediately. I watched as the truth sank in. The house had never been meant to belong solely to Claire. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to paint me as the greedy one was laid bare before their eyes. I didn't raise my voice or make threats. I simply let the evidence speak. The emotional impact was instantaneous. The family I had thought I'd lost forever was now staring at the undeniable reality of Claire's betrayal. Claire's confidence evaporated, replaced with panic and anger. Mom was stunned, speechless, forced to face the role she had played in allowing the deception to happen. By the end of the meeting, chaos had erupted. Emotions were raw, accusations flew, and the years of manipulation unraveled in real time. I left the room not with satisfaction, but with a sense of justice finally delivered. The storm had begun, and there was no going back. Half the days after the exposure were surreal. Family members who had always seemed distant or neutral suddenly took sides. Some whispered their support for me. Others quietly defended Claire, unwilling to believe she had betrayed me so blatantly. Conversations turned into arguments, arguments into confrontations. And the house that had once been a sanctuary became a battlefield of accusations, guilt, and raw emotion. Every interaction felt like walking through a minefield. One wrong word could ignite a full-scale feud. Claire faced the harsh consequences of her actions. The legal filings were corrected. The property's ownership restored to reflect Dad's original intentions. And her attempts to manipulate the documents were officially documented. Relatives who had once admired her charm now looked at her with a mix of shock and disappointment. Her reputation within the family and the community had taken a severe hit, and it was clear that the trust she had enjoyed for so long had crumbled. Meanwhile, Mom struggled to process her role in enabling the deception. She tried to mediate, to rebuild bridges, but the damage was already done. The family dynamic had shifted irreversibly. For me, the victory was bittersweet. I regained what was rightfully mine, the house and recognition of my sacrifices, but at a cost I hadn't fully anticipated. The people I had once trusted most had shown their true colors. And while justice had been served, the warmth and unity of family life I had hoped for were gone. Instead, I was left with a mix of relief, sorrow, and lingering mistrust. Yet amid the chaos, there was also a strange sense of liberation. The lies had been uncovered, the manipulation exposed, and the balance restored, at least legally and morally. I could finally move forward without carrying the weight of unseen betrayals or unappreciated sacrifices. The family would never be the same. But I had reclaimed my dignity and ensured that truth and fairness prevailed. The storm had passed, leaving wreckage, but also a hard-earned clarity. Loyalty and sacrifice are only meaningful when recognized. And betrayal, once revealed, cannot be ignored. Sitting alone in the house a few weeks after everything had unraveled, I finally had time to process what had happened. The silence was different now, heavier, but also strangely peaceful. Claire had retreated, her confidence shattered, and Mom was distant, still grappling with the fallout of her choices. I walked through each room, remembering the years I had spent maintaining the house, fixing what was broken, and carrying the weight of responsibility that no one else seemed willing to bear. It struck me that loyalty alone is never enough. Recognition, honesty, and fairness are what truly matter. I reflected on what I had learned through this ordeal. Betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from someone you love and trust, but exposing it can also free you. I realized that my value wasn't tied to approval or acknowledgement from those who took advantage of me, but in the integrity I maintained despite their deceit. The house, once a symbol of conflict and manipulation, had become a testament to my perseverance. It was a reminder that hard work, truth, and patience eventually prevail, even when the people closest to you fail. I also recognized the cost. Family relationships were forever changed, and some wounds might never heal. Claire's actions and Mom's complicity had left scars that no legal victory could erase. But amidst the chaos, I had gained something far more important: self-respect, clarity, and the courage to stand up for what was right. I understood that forgiveness was optional, but empowerment was essential. Looking out the window at the yard I had maintained for years, felt a mixture of melancholy and strength. The house was finally mine in every sense that mattered. But more than that, I had reclaimed my sense of self. I had survived betrayal, exposed the lies, and emerged stronger in the end. The lesson was clear. Family may fail you, trust can be broken, but standing firm in your truth is a victory no one can take away. And sometimes, losing the warmth of false loyalty is the only way to gain real peace.